Hi, Nicole Chanis. Thank you for joining us at 50's AF Podcast. We have today a great guest. So great he forgot to turn off his phone. That's the start of this podcast. Seriously. Okay, we're just diving right in. My guest today is a powerhouse. He's done 463 podcast episodes on Spotify called The Great Love Debate. I think he knows a thing or two, and his name is Brian Howie. Welcome, Brian, to your own podcast place, by the way.
Yeah, this is my studio. I always say, I don't know if I know a thing or two. I always say my job isn't to find the answers. My job is to raise the questions. But raising the questions that many times, we found a few of the answers. Yeah.
Did you? Did you actually find
yes.
things that resonated with you? Because, like, you are single, if I'm correct. I'm single. So, like, I found that I definitely, in interviewing people and learning, I did learn a thing or two. So do you feel like you did that, or what do you mean?
No doubt. I did not realize. So The Great Love Debate, it's a live show and a podcast. I've traveled all over the world. And when I first started, I was like, and this is, 11 years ago, in my 40s. And when I first started, I'm like, I don't understand the problem here. Dating's easy. Girls like me. What's the issue? And then the more I would listen to people, especially the men, I realized that I was living in this emotionally walled off, very narrow bandwidth that would prevent me from getting hurt, I think. I'm in my 50s. I've never been married.
But wait. Reel that back.
Yeah.
You found yourself in a bandwidth that you didn't want to get hurt. What do you mean by that?
So it means that I would live life like never to. I had lots of long-term relationships, but I would put enough chips on the table to stay in the game, but I would never go all in because all in was risky. So I would never put myself in an emotionally vulnerable position with anybody until because I was worried about getting hurt. And I would listen to all of these people coming to my live shows all over the world, especially men, talking about heartbreak and talking about the love of their lives and talking about these deep emotional experiences that they had. And I'm like, oh, wait, maybe I'm the weird one. And I went to therapy. And I went to therapy and I'd gone to therapy before, but every time I went to therapy previously, I would always try and find a therapist I could charm.
Manipulate a little bit? Yeah.
So she would be like, there's nothing wrong. Why are you even here? You're amazing. I would always need one. And so I found one who was way out on the kooky fringes. And she's like, we need to figure out what your trust issue is. And so we had to dial it back because fear comes from lack of trust. You don't trust the environment. You don't trust the people. And so as we dialed it back, my parents were married for, 50-something years. I don't even think they liked each other. So because I did not trust their love for each other, I did not trust their love for me, which means I didn't trust the concept. And so I'm like, I don't want that. So I put myself in a position where I would have relationships intentionally with women who were either also not getting married or interested or so damaged that we would focus on them the whole time.
Isn't it really like how amazing we can get fucked up by our parents? Like, in the sense that I have huge trust issues, and it does stem from people in my life letting me down.
Yes.
My trust is a different trust issues. And, it amazes me. I can be self-aware. I acknowledge it. But that key to my heart still is hard to turn. As much therapy, as much self-awareness as I have.
We're still dealing with 5-year-old Brian and 6-year-old Nicole. We're still going back to that. And so I learned that early on. I'm like, oh, these people are all messed up. Well, wait a minute. No, maybe it's me. They're at least putting themselves in positions, no risk, no reward. They're putting themselves out there. I thought we'll be I would make the joke that the resume I was handing in was for boyfriend. I wasn't applying for husband. I wasn't applying for father. I wasn't interested in those because those things take more than just impish charm. Yeah. And I would be like, I'm really good at 30, 60, 90 days in a relationship because I have all the jokes and that stuff. And then I would have these girlfriends after, 3 or 4 years, they would get frustrated with me because they're like, you don't even know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We had a good time last night. We laughed. That was fun. And they're like, do you understand what I need out of this relationship? And I was like, no, I didn't. I was like, as long as I'm nice and we're having fun. And they're like, this is not substantive. This is not, we're not in a place of, and so doing my show, I was like, wait, what is everybody else doing that I'm not? And again, it drove me to therapy and asking questions, and I think I'm fine now. But there are a lot of men in their 50s, rightfully so, that are judged for never having been married, and they should be, because there's a reason for it.
Same with women, though. I think too.
Oh, trust me.
Yeah.
If I met a woman over 40 and she'd never been married, I would want to know why.
Yeah.
And you can't give me like, oh, I just haven't met the right person, or
No.
You need to own it.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, the reason why is I hadn't done the work. I wasn't emotionally available. Most women are pretty receptive to that. They, it's better than the alternative in their minds. They're like, oh, total player, secretly gay, mommy issues.
Is that
like,
how you got labeled?
That's what they do. If you're over 40, it's a red, because even if they're okay with it, their friends and their family are yapping in their ear.
Oh my
like,
God, can I tell you how annoying is it when friends interject their perspective of what you should and shouldn't do? And it's like, okay, you've been married 40 plus years. Thank you very much. I definitely, in the beginning, and when I met you, and you were like, your rules are bullshit. You called me out. I'm like, no, I'm sticking to these rules. And it was like, in my journey, I found that those rules didn't work. And I own that. And I was very strong on those rules. And it's like you go through the journey, and at some point you have to look at yourself, like you're talking about. But the other thing, when you're talking about staying long term in a relationship, is it partially you don't want to, I know you travel for work and you have business, putting that aside.
But I always.
Okay, so was some of the issue I can't be with somebody all the time?
No, I don't think it was that either. I think one of the biggest problems I noticed in relationships is, or long term, is when you get married, you go from husband, wife to mom and dad. And mom and dad, to me, because of the way my house was, it didn't seem romantic at all. It didn't seem fun at all. I wanted to always be in that boyfriend-girlfriend zone because that seemed more fun to me.
Right.
That being said, almost all of life and love's answer lie outside of your comfort zone. And if I wasn't willing to get out of my comfort zone, I was never going to find those answers. So, I was always like, well, I've never been married. That means, I'm still sort of hopeful as to the long term, the happily ever after. Because
so you do want to get married?
Oh, yeah, because divorce hasn't jaded that for me. And I always say, what if I got married for 3 weeks back when I was 23? Is that better? And they're like, yeah, that's better. And I'm like, why? And they're like, at least it shows that you're capable of it, or you want to do it. And I'm like, well, I might have just been drunk a weekend in Vegas. Is that better? And they're like, yeah, that's better. So being a bachelor in your 50s is a huge red flag, and probably should be. Being a Scorpio at any age is a red flag to a big percentage of the women.
I'm Sagittarius. What does that mean?
That's fine. Scorpio and Gemini are the ones that freak people out. Being agnostic freaks people out because it means you won't take a side. They'd rather you be an atheist because it means you stand for something.
Yes.
Agnostic, I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Yep.
They don't like that.
And I've run into a few people that are very, committed to, how could you feel that way? Being, right. Yeah.
I'm just open to anything. I'm like, maybe. And they're like, that's not good enough. People really want clarity in who you are, what you did. Are you married, divorced, single, widowed, whatever? They want to know exactly what that means. Well, divorce could mean me and my husband split up amicably 15 years ago. We talk all the time. It's great. Or it could mean I'm in court every Wednesday with my ex-husband. Yeah. There's so much nuance that people don't have. And so when we paint these brushes, which I am as guilty of as anybody else, that, tends to lead down the wrong path. So I think that everybody has to be open to possibilities, recognize those possibilities, act on those possibilities, and don't dismiss those possibilities. And I think the possibilities exist for all of us at all ages, many times a day, everywhere in the world. As long as you leave your house.
You got to get out there to do something.
Get out.
Going back to when you did the tour of the Great Love Debate, and learning, as you interviewed people, what was the pattern that you saw that said, even a step back, what made you get into doing that, and what takeaways?
I thought if I had all the answers, I could get the keys to the kingdom, and I didn't. My whole professional career, I've been writer, director, producer. I've always sort of at least dabbled or dove deeply into the dynamic between men and women. About 11 years ago, I wrote a semi-tongue-in-cheek book about dating called How to Find Love in 60 Seconds. My manager at the time said, rather than do a traditional book tour with 20 people in a Barnes & Noble, I want you to raise some of the questions that the book raises in like a theater setting. I was supposed to do a one-time promotional stunt. Now I've done it in 13 countries. And the two things that I have learned that are no matter where we've done it, I've done the show in Tel Aviv and Shanghai and Singapore and Sydney and everywhere. I always say that the women look for red flags and the men look for green lights.
Yeah.
That is really the core of it. There's a fundamental optimism, I think, when a man asks a woman out on a date that he hopes it goes well. She is like, how do I prevent myself from getting hurt? He's afraid of being rejected. She's afraid of being hurt. Mm-hmm. The second thing is the women want the men to try harder and the men want the women to make it easier. And because we're at this standoff now, especially as traditional gender roles have become really blurred.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what to do. All we know is what the last person liked, and we probably found that out too late. So there's this standoff. If we took one half step back towards each other, and I'm not saying things were perfect in the 90s, but at least we could ask you out. At least we could tell you were hot.
Yeah, there's so many barriers now. You can't touch somebody's shoulder. You can't pick them up. It's like a crock of bullshit. So so I want to know, because you're so well versed on this and you travel quite a bit now.
Yeah.
Do you date when you travel, and are the people different in your observation?
Well, people are
than
different.
Boca.
People
we live
are different
in
every city. We're recording this in Boca Raton, Florida. It's different. You go into a bar in Seattle and it sounds different from a bar in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, everybody's looking towards the door. In Seattle, everybody's sort of socially awkward. In New York, they're all having intimate one-on-one conversations. Charlotte, it looks like a school dance where men are on one side and women are on the other until people are going to dive in. The only place that I have been anywhere in the world that to me looked like normal dating is Shanghai, China. And people might be like, how is that possible?
Traditional.
Yes. It looks like 1950s, like coffee shop style. They
men
have
are men,
they have no
ladies.
Facebook.
Yeah.
They have no Facebook, so they're not as distracted by social media. They have no Tinder, so they don't have the traditional dating apps.
I've never been on Tinder.
And they have no porn or easily accessible. So you want to see some nudity? You're going to have to ask her out. Right. So the things that we used to need that now we can get from alternative stimuli, which is the danger. I mean, now everything's virtually, you can date anybody you want.
Yeah.
Somebody can walk up to you at Whole Foods, take a picture of you, create an avatar of you that's going to talk to them, call him by his name, tell him you're amazing.
That's fucked up. Is it going to make me a blow-up doll?
Yeah. Oh, even better. Like a helmet will go on. It'll be a virtual version of you. It's going to be anything you want. I could see that having appealed to some men who are so broken and jaded. This virtual dating it's here. It's now.
Then why even are you saying society is heading towards a time where we don't need human to human contact, perhaps?
I'm saying that, well, let me back up a bit. So 5 things have happened in the last 10 years that we could not have accounted for that really, really screwed up dating. One is, like I said, the blurring of the traditional gender roles. 2 is Me Too. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It took dating out of the workplace. And where you spend 40, 50 hours a week with these people, now these people are no longer in your pool.
Work husband, work wife concept. Yeah. Gone, yeah.
COVID happened. Took a lot of people into a position of, I am going to find ways to entertain myself at home. Big percentage of those people never came back. They never came back out.
I got a kid. Won't go back.
Politics happened, meaning you used to be able to date somebody for years and not really even know how they voted. Didn't come up. They want to know how you stand on Trump before the edamame comes. Yeah. Like they want to know right away, where do you stand on this, this, and this? That has brought an antagonistic attitude towards it.
Do you feel that women or men have more rules on those expectations of black and white, no gray?
Women, by far.
Yeah.
Because the men will still be like, oh, she's hot. We can probably go out.
Right.
They'll work around it. But certain women, they're just like, nope, nope, nope. And I'm like,
I agree. That's
probably one of 10,000 characteristics. This sort of list making, this checkbox making, I need this. All you know is what you've heard me say this before. If you're over 40 and you're still single, you have no type because your type is not working out for you. So whatever you think you're looking for has not worked. You need to get outside. So if you think I only like vegetarians, or I only like men who, shoot guns, or I need a Republican, I need a Democrat, I need a Jewish person, Christian, whatever, you have to throw all that out. And your answer tends to live sort of in the land of no, where you were afraid to go. And that's what people are afraid to do now. And the fifth thing, obviously, is the technology in dating, whether it's the apps, whether it's virtual. A kid who's 15 years old now, by the time he gets to high school, he's going to be able to put on a virtual reality helmet. Somebody who looks just like, I don't know, Ariana Grande is going to call him by his name, give him a reasonably satisfying experience. He's never going to ask a girl out. This combination of like video game and porn where he can feel successful and get to levels. And you're going to be like, oh, it's not as good. It's not as good, but he doesn't know.
Right, he doesn't know any different.
People can go to Fiji now by just putting on a helmet. Yeah. Once you take the risk away, which is what I lived my life, taking the risk away, then you live in this sort of narrow bandwidth that is between like a 5 and a 7 of emotionally satisfying. And that's good enough for most people. So
you take the risk, the risk aspect, and then our trust issues.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess when you think about it.
It is.
It is. Because I know, I learned by fulfilling and trying to date people that I was told must be on that list. And then when I really sat down and thought about it, I was like, who's this list made up of? Is it by me? Is it people in my ear? And what really satisfies me? And I threw it all to shit. I said, I'm done dating in Boca. Fuck it. I'm like, I'm done. I'm just done. And that's when somebody walked into my life that literally one thing on the list was there.
Yeah.
And the best relationship. I
have one thing on my list. You know what that is?
Existing and breathing?
No, I don't even care about that.
Loving?
So much. That she likes me.
Oh, I
and
love
isn't
that.
afraid to say it or show it.
Yeah.
Everything else I can probably work with. If we start there, so many people are so scared just to do that because they're afraid to open up. I want to play these games. I want him to chase me. I want to do all this. That I'm like, if I don't know, if I'm not getting any sort of feedback, response, hitting the ping pong ball back to me or whatever, then I feel like a failure as a man, which a lot of women are like, well, you shouldn't need that pat on the nose. Well, you're going to give me the smack on the nose, so I sure absolutely could get the pat on the nose. Right. A lot of times the men just have no idea what you're thinking, feeling. We don't know that you like. A lot of women are like, he didn't ask me out for a second date. And I'm like, did you tell him you were interested in going on a second date? And she's always like, he could tell. He can't tell.
No, not only that. I mean, I heard the other day somebody just talk about the way the bill is presented on the first date. And if this man didn't handle it in XYZ fashion, done. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And it was like a very interesting, I don't want to call it out, but it was a very that's so uncalled for. I feel like women, I want to say, are more difficult in they're like very rigid. But at the same time, I know this one gentleman, and he'll be my guest eventually, that, he'll dive into dating a girl and he's a great catch. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, she didn't do XYZ. Well, do you need XYZ? I almost feel like a lot of men look for excuses in a woman's performance. And I feel like women are really hard right from the start.
Everybody's afraid. Everybody has baggage. Everybody has this. So it really takes this perfect combination of two people who are willing to be honest, vulnerable, take chances, and go into a relationship that is, at least early on, free of judgment. Yeah. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. A lot of people are looking for reasons to pull the parachute way too quickly.
I know.
We didn't used to say like, okay, I'll give you 15 minutes, and if this doesn't click perfectly, we're out. We used to ask each other out, pick you up, take you out, spend an hour together, work through that nervousness, take you home. This was fun. Would you like to do it again? Make out in the car and all that. Yeah. Nothing is like that now. It's meet up, hang out. This is good. Uber, bye, done. You're not giving anything a chance to. You're trying to date on something looking for magic that could exist 5 dates down the road if you gave it a chance to breathe.
Right.
You're looking for this instant, like, this feels perfect.
Right.
And so people are willing to, like, next.
Yeah, I hear often was a waste of 1 hour of my life. And I'll be like, well, what did you learn about that person? And I also know people that on the flip side, the first date wasn't great back in the day. Not now. Back in the day, their first date wasn't great, to your point, and they were like, well, let me see 2, let me see. And by 5, the guy is better looking because that person fell in love with the inside
and we're
person.
more comfortable. Like, people are very nervous on a first date. A lot of people are like, first time you had sex, it's not always great.
Right.
Do it again. Unless you like spilled something flammable on her in the date or it was really like uncomfortable and you hate each other, go out a second time. Just change the environment. We tried this. It was kind of weird. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many walls come down between dates, 1 and 2 if you give it a chance.
I often say, like, people, women especially, men may not appear nervous, but they're nervous and you're nervous.
Very.
That first date is not their true self of who they are.
And he's trying to, and a lot of times women are like, oh, he just talked about himself. Well, when men are nervous, they talk more. When women are nervous, a lot of times they talk less. So sometimes he's dominating the conversation because he doesn't really know what to say. And he kind of just babbles on aimlessly. Like, you've got to work through this and you got to understand, like, you don't really know each other.
Yeah.
He probably told you were beautiful 3 times and all he got back at you was thank you. He's not getting anything back.
Right.
So he needs to just flail around till he finds something that gets a reaction. Again, guys, you got to do better. Yeah. Think about this. You got to be more interesting. But, the women have to understand it's a lot harder for the guys than you think.
No, and I do think, to your point, I think women don't know to say, thank you for making these arrangements. You look handsome tonight. They need affirmation just as much.
Absolutely.
Right?
Or like, oh my God, you look amazing when you wear that. Will you wear that blue suit for me?
Yes.
Say that instead of saying like, oh my God, you're going to wear that John Elway jersey again. Like, give him something to go on.
Yeah.
The other advantage a lot of the women have, at least let's say you, or attractive women, that every guy will go out with you once. Not everybody will go out with you twice, but you at least get the shot with 90% of guys.
Okay.
You
Unless they
on
like
a date,
blondes.
You say, yeah, but they'll still probably go out with you. Men don't feel that way no matter how good looking or how charming. They still think they're very fortunate to get the opportunity and they don't want to squander the opportunity. The women are a lot more carefree with the opportunities because they think, and they're probably right, another one will come along. Well, then that takes away the specialness of the moment. It takes away the experience of the date because you're just next, I'll get another shot. And I don't want to see this through the icky point that you're going to have to do.
You have to do icky.
It might be icky in 6 months.
You have to, let's face it, relationships take work.
Yeah.
And not only that, you're going to have an argument. You're going to have, it's how you navigate it, how you deal with it.
It's never going to be perfect.
Right. And the other thing is, to that point, that a lot of people fall into this category. They came out of a relationship, let's say divorce, and they have triggers. And so the next person they're dating, the first time they do something that emotes that trigger, they're like, I'm out, bounce. I learned in therapy, don't punish the other person for someone else's past mistake they did to you. Don't make it a red flag. Make it a yellow flag, which is communicate, hey, this is something I can't have in a relationship. Just know, are you okay with that? But don't punish that person because of the hurt this other person gave you.
And sometimes you just don't know. Like, one time I was out with this girl and opened the door, put her in. I got in my side and I locked the door. She had had an experience where some boyfriend 15 years ago had locked her somewhere. So having somebody lock her in changed her mood. And she eventually told me like what happened, but she's like, I couldn't help. It like wrecked the last hour of the date. There was no way for me to know. I just didn't want her to fall out of the car. Yeah. And obviously she's not going to tell that story over the entree on date 1 because you shouldn't be like bring up your trauma. There was no way to know. Then when I kind of knew and explained and then we began to talk about certain things. I am not somebody who agrees with the tenet that you should not talk about past relationships on a date. I want to know. I want to know if somebody just says every single guy was a jerk, I've dated 10 narcissists or whatever. That's just statistically impossible and bad luck. You need to own your place in it.
I actually play in that sandbox. I have people say, oh, we shouldn't talk about past relationships. I'm like, oh, hell no. I want to know what I'm stepping into. Right.
I don't even ask why you got divorced. Here's what I ask people, because this tells me more. When did you know it wasn't going to be forever?
Oh, I love that.
And I'm shocked at how many people say, when he asked, a wedding
yes,
day,
me too.
a weekend. Wait, you were married for 14 years.
I hear that.
I knew. Why'd you stay together? I don't know. Like, I hear that a lot. Almost all the people know very early that this is not 50 years.
Not only that, like men will say, like, I was in a loveless marriage for 15 years with no sex.
Happens all the time.
I never knew it.
They're like, I don't care what he does, touch anybody but me. Separate bedrooms is very common. Again, once you get into mom and dad, it's just a different energy level. It's a different physical level. It's different. It changes things. But people will exist that way for years.
Yeah. Well, also, though, one of the challenges I find, in dating is, I'm 55. I have things I like doing, but going back to my upbringing and my triggers and all that, I need alone time. Like for me personally, I couldn't be with someone 24/7 at my hip. I can't. Like I
think you need to miss the person.
You need to miss them. Exactly. And I love that. We don't have to talk 10 times a day. Like give me substance when we see each other or talk blank. But it's like, people give yourself some pause and space a little bit.
I think, and so again, I wrote the book, How to Find Love in 60 Seconds, and I don't agree with 90% of the book anymore. I've changed so much in 10 years.
When did you write it? How long ago?
2011.
Oh, yeah. You've evolved.
I have.
Who you are, yeah.
And the world has changed, and that's why people are always like, you're going to write another book? I'm like, I'm so paranoid as soon as they print it, everything changes.
Not only that, you'll be scrutinized for everything
one of the things that I stand by in the book is before you find love, you have to define it. Define what that means for yourself, because we love pizza, and we love the Yankees, and we love the ocean, and we love, what does love mean? Mm-hmm. And for me, I had to define that. I had to be like, what does this look like, feel like? What is this? And for me, it means there's nothing I'm doing that I wouldn't rather be doing with her. Doesn't mean I have to do it with her or even want to do it with her, because it means I want to share the experience with her. I want to tell her about it. There's something about my experience that she could bring to it. And if there's nothing I'm doing that I wouldn't that wouldn't somehow benefit by her thoughts, her presence, her opinion, her feelings, everything. And if I have that, I'm like, I love her. And for some people are like, that's not fireworks and tangible enough. It works for me. I understand that. If I feel this way, if I'm thinking in a moment, like, I wonder what she's doing, I wish she should, I probably love her.
Two points on that. I definitely come from the school that if you can't, you're coming from a divorce or being a widow, you're
presented
broken.
By Wawa.
Oh, Wawa, here we go. Wawa. But if you come out of a divorce or widowhood, I don't care. You got some shit to figure out.
Yeah.
And my first thing is you got to fall in love with yourself. How can you fall in love with someone else if you're not in love with yourself? Number one. Number two is, your list, let's just call it or whatever it is that, you were talking about expectations, whatsoever, is part of falling in love with yourself and doing what I like to think is like, what is it I need to derive out of this relationship? Not a list. What makes me the best version of me? If you're in a relationship, that person should be making and bringing out the best version of you. And that's undefinable. That is person to person. And you just kind of know it and you grow and you evolve. And it's like, I think people just think it's like being in this freaking hamster wheel and they're pointing the fingers at everyone else for their failed relationships. You are great that you put yourself in therapy.
You need to take ownership. And the credit to the women on this, the women have let us know more in the last 10 years that the most confident man in the room is the most vulnerable. He's the one who owns his shit and made us more comfortable going to therapy. And the women do not judge, because for so many years we had to be strong and perfect and confident and whatever. The women have let the men know, like, I know there's something wrong with you. It's a lot easier for me if you know there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, I agree with the loving yourself. However, one caveat to that, I think the right person at the right moment in the right situation can cause you to love yourself. They can trigger something in them that lets you find a confidence in you or a belief in yourself that didn't prior exist before. So I think, we're all sort of hope to get like 80% complete, and then the right person comes along in the right situation, and you both take that journey together.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I believe the right person can just see something in you and believe in you in a way that you could never do on your own.
Yeah.
And can change everything.
I think a cheerleader in life is amazing.
It's harder to find somebody to believe in you than to love you.
I agree.
Yeah. And if you find those people, and I can, there's quite a few people I can think that person loved me. There's only 2 people in my whole life that I think, wow, they believed in me in a way that I never did.
Yeah.
And they changed everything for me. Those are professional context, but that trickled into my personal life, that they found something in me that I would have never found on my own, and probably a lot of my partners were never able to either recognize it or express it to me in a way I could understand.
Right. I'm huge on communication.
Yeah.
I think
and it's hard.
It's so hard for people, but when you find somebody, I just find that communication is like the secret sauce to everything.
And everybody communicates differently.
Uh-huh.
You got to learn. Some people do not want to be texted 15 times a day.
Yeah.
Some people do.
Yeah.
When you send a business thing, you always say, like, my preferred method of reaching me or how I like it is this. Not a bad idea to do it, personally either. Mm-hmm. Not a bad way to say, like, I like when you do this. Don't panic if I don't answer my phone right away. I don't always pay attention.
Right.
Like, you got to know, because that lets in the insecurity and the worry and, like, where are they right now?
Yeah.
So people just shut their phone off.
Why do you think men, often I'm using men, I think it's more women, but, feel that need to connect every single day and talk? I don't think, it's not in a controlling way.
We want to know you're thinking about us the way we're thinking about you.
Is that what it is?
That's what I believe it is. I believe that men are fundamentally more romantic than women. I do believe that. I believe when a man proposes to a woman, he hopes to be happily ever after with her. She might say yes for 100 different reasons. The house, the dog, the white picket fence, the kids. He's not even on that list. Mm-hmm. He's not even on that list. The 5 things I just mentioned, there's no man on there. I think that he desperately wants to feel love. She wants to feel safe and special and sexy and a lot of these things, but this love thing, and I think he's reaching out to her because he's thinking of her, and a big part of him is hoping she's feeling the same way.
Going back to the great love debate. So your journey of getting into it, and what did you take out of it personally?
Well, I wanted to know the disconnect between the men and the women. I wanted to be like, well, why does this only get easier with alcohol?
But it does.
I know it does.
It really
does.
And
personally, I was like, it wasn't that I had not had happy, loving, sharing, positive relationships, is that I had not had complete relationships, honest relationships, like ones that were like, we are in this together from a position of authenticity, vulnerability, good, bad, all that kind of stuff. Wasn't willing to go there. And the people who had gone there successfully, they had life experiences that I was not having. It was almost like I was one of those people having a virtual version. I wasn't climbing Everest. I was just reading about it. Yeah. And the people that were willing to go there painted a picture to me of what this could feel like that made me, still working on it, unravel the barriers, unravel everything.
Right, right.
I wear these glasses. So they're reading glasses, essentially. You've probably never seen me without them.
No, I think it's a good look for you.
Thank you, but that's not why I wear. So I started to go about 10 years ago, so I had to do this with the phone and whatever.
Yeah, that's me.
Instead of just getting reading, so I never take them off, because the more vulnerable I become in life, the more I feel like I need an extra barrier of protection.
That is so funny. My son, when he was like really young, had these fears, and like for 2 years we couldn't go anywhere because he would like literally go under the table.
Yeah.
So we decided to get this pair of sunglasses, and he believed that you couldn't see him with the sunglasses on. It was the cutest thing.
I need to see the world through a pane of glass because safe. Somebody's, people come up to me all the time and they've heard me say this on my podcast. They're like, will you take your glasses off for me? And I will, but naturally going through life, the more vulnerable I feel, the more I need something, which is, I own that and I admit that. And, eventually I probably won't be that way, but yeah.
Do you know, because I love diving into your great debate, show, and it's hilarious and entertaining, and I encourage all of you to go to Spotify, put the Great Love Debate, because they're great. They really are.
Thank you.
What, 436? Was
I've
that
done
right?
457 live shows and 468 podcasts.
So you're a wealth of knowledge and experience. What are your personal adjustments you made in terms of interviewing people, or do you still make adjustments, or you're like, I'm done learning and evolving?
No, I think you can learn from every experience. I think we focus so much on the questions, we don't pay attention to the answers. I think that, like I said earlier, so many of life's answers sit across from somebody who's thought was not your type. Go out with somebody. If you say you like blondes, I guarantee you I can find you 100 brunettes that you would love in 2 seconds.
I agree.
Don't just think this is what you are.
Yeah.
A lot of men are like, they get out of these miserable marriages and they just want to do the complete opposite. They either want to go really young, or they want to go really exotic, or they want to do anything. Yeah. That person does not sum up all people of the same way.
No.
And, you also have to get through the anger or even the sadness of the last relationship before you can get to the new one, because it's not fair to you. It's not fair to the new person. It's not fair to the relationship.
Yep.
So when you're ready, I think, is when you go 24 hours without thinking or feeling anything about that person in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
That's the hump you need to get over.
Well,
that's
the only caveat to that is if you're a widow.
There's
That's time that you can date, and you have in that
the widow,
schedule.
Though, you might think of, but you can still think of your husband in a your late husband in a longing fashion, or but not in this emotionally like it gets you riled up way, and that's still going to take time.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge I've noticed of dating as a widow to widower, I'm not one, but I've talked to a lot of them, is a lot of the people you date are uncomfortable with, not to be flippant about it, the ghost.
Yeah.
They don't know how to deal with that.
It takes, from my perspective as a widow, it takes a strong man not to be intimidated and understand it. Mm-hmm. And it's a part of who I am. But then again, it also goes back to, I'm now dating at 55. I've been dating a few years, but I'm not the same person that I was when I met my late husband. So therefore, I don't need to compare in my vision. It's who I am now at my next wonderful chapter of my life, which I personally feel like the best version of myself.
And it's just a different chapter.
It takes widows a little bit of a breathing time to kind of figure out, stop looking for what you did in your 20s or 30s when you met your late husband. It's totally different, your needs in the 50s. And, I think that grieving is so different for everybody. And
in a lot of ways, you grieve the divorce too. That marriage, that died, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
A lot of people have, because divorce for a lot of people killed the fantasy of happily ever after, that they're reluctant to go down that road again.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, I tried marriage. It didn't work for me. I'm never doing it again. Well, just don't do marriage with that person again. That doesn't mean the institution doesn't work. It doesn't mean that, there's always possibility. And don't live your life in absolutes. I won't do this, I can't do that, or whatever. You're ruling out a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. So the moral of what we're talking about is be more open-minded and don't rule things out, and don't be so pigeon-toed and rule list. And I personally had to go through that journey to figure that out. So it's great hearing from someone like you, Brian, that actually, a lot of experience in talking to people.
A lot of dating.
A lot of dating.
I had a long run, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I say this. Here's the one upside of being with a guy who's been dating for a long, long time. The stuff that's going to freak out normal guys who are married for 20 years, it's not going to faze me at all, because I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And on that, I'm able to work through a little bit of the muck and the ick and the erraticism and all that kind of stuff. You wake up in a bad mood, it's probably not me. And for most of our lives as men, our instant thing is to figure out
how to fix it.
Or am I to blame for this? Or they're like, what is this? How do I fix it?
Right.
She just needs, that's her thing. That's her time. Respect it.
Yeah.
She'll let you know if it's about you.
Yeah.
She'll let you know.
Yeah. I often tell people, if you see me silent or just give me my space. Let me just sit with this motion, So I hope that other people will like learn from just our casual conversation, and a person like you that's like done your homework and lived it and breathed it.
I try.
So
I think it's the one thing people are like, you do podcasts about love, dating, relationships. And I've done, I don't know, 500 shows or something. They're like, do you ever run out? I go, why would I run out? It is the one thing that every person on this planet has experience with, perspective on, an opinion on, heard from, anecdotes about. It's the one thing that we can all talk about as adults because it's something we all live, even if you're in a good relationship, every single day.
Oh, I think even when you're in a relationship and not dating, you have to always put the other person first. You have to remember, don't be cavalier about that relationship. You need to work it every day.
Build confidence, improve communication, even in your 80s when when you think you have nothing. You have to continue to try to learn your partner. Be curious about your partner. Be curious about what you can do better constantly. It's always a journey. It's all a journey.
It's all a journey, and it's a journey we're on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing a little bit about your journey.
This was fun.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys, and as always, keep listening as an audience, and we always bring lots of different subjects and guests. And for those of you that watch, you know where to go on YouTube. Thanks so very much. Bye.